Hello and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Thursday, the 23rd of July. I am your host, Daniel, and today we're going to talk about Iran has hit CIA sites with Russia's role in the conflict currently under question. Zelenskyy has met with Trump's envoys as their long-range strikes continue, and a US judge has set out the Maduro trial date for June 2027. So firstly, Iranian strikes have hit facilities linked to the CIA, with reporting on July the 22nd raising questions over whether Russia is playing a role in their operations. The targeting has drawn attention because it moved beyond conventional military sites towards infrastructure tied directly to American intelligence working in the region. US officials have not publicly confirmed a Russian contribution to strike data, but the possibility is now part of the assessment being made in Washington. So what? Tehran's almost certainly selecting intelligence infrastructure to try and degrade US collection and warnings in the capabilities in the region, rather than to inflict casualties within this organization. There's a realistic possibility here that the targeting data originated outside of Iranian collection, so has been supported by Russia, but they're the most credible provider. It could also be China, but that seems less likely, as China has so far been unwilling to provide this type of information from all of the reporting that we have seen. And public US attribution of Russia's role would highly likely widen the conflict beyond the Middle Eastern theater. I think this is highly likely, especially the way the US current administration has acted towards Russia. I don't think they would make public attribution statements blaming Russia for the role, as that would be a significant step forward. But, if we do see them change their kind of an outlook on the conflict in Ukraine and become much more supportive of Ukraine, this could indicate that they do think that Russia is behind supporting Iran in the conflict. It would be an interesting turn of events if it did pan out that way, as it puts them in a bit of a pit situation. And next, Volodymyr Zelenskyy held talks with envoys sent by Donald Trump while Ukrainian attacks on targets inside Russia continued. The meetings are part of Washington's push to move Kiev and Moscow towards a settlement, and they land at the moment when Ukraine's deep strike campaign is running at a significant pace. Kiev's position is that sustained pressure on Russian territories strengthens rather than undermines its hand at the negotiating table. So what? Kiev is almost certainly sustaining the deep strike capability to raise the price of any settlement rather than collapse the talks altogether. They want to put pressure on Russia to try and, make a good deal, make them hurt, make them suffer, and pay for their conflict in Ukraine, make the price essentially too high to continue. But US pressure here is highly likely to fall on Ukraine before Russia, as, aid remains Washington's only really direct lever in the conflict. They don't really have any more strings to pull when it comes to forcing Russia to the negotiating table, regardless of what Trump has said in the past. This became pretty clear, I think, quite early on in his administration. But yeah, a sharp fall in Ukrainian strike tempo after the meeting would indicate some kind of framework here that has been arranged. But I think this is kind of unlikely at this stage without, Russia setting out some kind of deal, or at least being open to the possibility that they might withdraw from Ukrainian territory, especially Crimea. And lastly, a US federal judge has set June 2027 as the trial date for Nicolas Maduro. The case rests on the 2020 US indictment accusing him of narco-terrorism and of conspiring to flood the United States with cocaine. The schedule puts almost a year of pre-trial process ahead of tying Venezuela's leadership question to proceedings in an American courtroom. So what? I think this is going to be a pretty tough case and something that'll be very interesting to see play out in public, because there's a pretty high barrier to entry for evidence when it comes to a US courtroom compared to what you can just say publicly, let's say. And I think there will be some closed evidence where they use classified reporting, but I think just due to the significant attention that this activity, let's call it, has raised, that a lot of it will need to be public to avoid any kind of pushback both from like oppositions in the US political sphere, but also from the international community. The June 2027 trial date makes a negotiated political settlement in Carcarus unlikely before proceedings conclude. Washington almost certainly uses the 2020 narco-terrorism indictment as the legal framework for its wider Venezuelan policy. And yeah, there's a realistic possibility that discovery will expose how the trafficking networks did reach beyond Venezuela and into the United States. As I said, I think they're going to have to be pretty public here with what they've got, and it needs to be pretty clear cut, tying Maduro to it significantly. Otherwise, there will be huge pushback. But yeah, that's been the Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. See you.